Mike said I look like a rock star today.
He did? What makes you look like, oh, you got to pop the collar?
I don't know. He was like, you look like a rock star today. I was like, I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult, but thank you.
Pull up a cup of coffee and let's get this party started.
We're the uplines you didn't know you needed, but now you have.
This is the podcast for women who are building a direct sales business, but want to do it the right way.
Melanie has a decade of experience in direct sales. She's earned the top in industry 4 years in a row and has grown a multi-million-dollar organization. She gives a no BS approach to leadership, recruitment, and organization.
And my bestie Katy has you covered with the rest. From the relationships, the do's and don'ts of branding, her content has been viewed by millions. She doesn't just talk the talk, but she teaches people how to create an intentional brand too.
All right, let's get this party started. If that was a compliment or an insult. That was our morning.
We're going to take it as a compliment.
It's fine.
A rock star. I like it. I like it. All right, you guys, welcome back to the Direct Sales Done Right podcast. I am Melanie Mitro, and this is Katy Ursa, and we are excited to dive into a topic about just overcoming limiting beliefs. And I'm pretty sure that it doesn't matter if you just started in direct sales or if you are leading a team and you've been in the industry for years or maybe even a decade like the two of us.
Yes.
Self-limiting beliefs are a real thing, and they creep up no matter where you're at in your business. So we're going to dive into that. But before we do, we always like to read our review of the week, and we want to just take a moment to shout out somebody that left us a review on iTunes. So it's Unsoakable, I believe, is how you say her account. Cool. Yeah, it is really cool. So this is on iTunes, and she said, Melanie and Katy are so relatable and incredibly helpful with growing and expanding your online personal business. They give you the tools and techniques that are up to date and very usable. So thank you for that. We really appreciate the 5-star rating. And if you are, again, listening, will you head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review? It does help this podcast to be found by other people who are in the direct sales industry as well. And we also like to pick somebody from our social media that screenshots the episode. So if you want to be one of our reviews listeners of the week, you can screenshot this episode. When you're done, tell us what your biggest takeaway is, and then tag us at Chic Influencer. You can also tag at Katy Writes Content, and it's Katy, and then it's at Melanie Mitro. We love to reshare, also jump into the DMs and chat with you. So Jennifer Swartz, we just want to say thank you for the tag. Yes, and also, if you reach out to the Chic Influencer account, let us know you are the listener of the week. We'll do a little mini coaching session with you right inside of the DMs. So, all right, let's dive into mindsets.
Yeah, I always feel as though when we talk about mindset, people go, yes, I need this. It's going to change my life. But I want to remind you that it doesn't matter how much we talk about mindset. Unless we take action on the principles we're going to talk about today, it's never going to make that big of a difference. And I just want to share that I have my phone open in front of me because I'm going to be pulling a reel that was super impactful for our family not too long ago. But before I do that, I want to give a stat because I always love when we can take stats and kind of relate them to where we are right now in our life. So according to the Cleveland Clinic, the average person has about 60,000 thoughts a day. So they say average person, but then I think as a mom, I probably have a lot more thoughts.
Mine never
because
stops.
It just doesn't. But of those 60,000, 95%, up to 95% are repeated thoughts, which I found to be very interesting. But here's what's crazy. On average, 80% of those repeated thoughts are negative. So pause on that. Do you realize that about 80% of your repeated thoughts are the negative story that you have put on repeat in your mind? Can you imagine that? Like if you actually think about the way that you think, most of the thoughts that you have are negative, and it is going to be an uphill climb to combat that. Not that it can't be done, but it is a skill to actually overcome those things, which we're going to talk about that skill set today. But before we do, I want to share that I don't think that negativity and mindset is just limited to what we do in business. Melanie and I are both moms. Our boys are all athletic. They are involved with sports. And if you know anything about the sports world, whether you are a mom as well, or you yourself are involved in the sports industry, you know that sometimes bad coaching happens, right? Like you are aware that sometimes your child's experience with a sport is less than ideal because of a coaching experience. And right now in this season, my older son, Nick, he plays two types of sports. He plays what's called ice hockey. And then what he also plays what's called deck hockey. Deck hockey, and in Canada, what did she say it was called? Ground hockey? I forget.
Oh,
Lindsay
really?
Fortney was telling me, she's like,
Okay.
we call it something else. She's going to laugh at me if she's listening because I screwed it up. But anyways, ball hockey, deck hockey is played on shoes. It's on a deck surface, and it's very much like the sport of ice hockey. They've been involved with this sport since they were about 4 years old.
Okay.
So they've been like with a stick in their hand basically all of their life. And this specific season, he's now in the 4th year of working with this particular coach, and it just has gotten really tough. And my husband and I had to make a decision at the beginning of the year, do we want to continue to have him coached by this specific person, or do we want to maybe go somewhere else? Do we want to look at other options? And we decided to stay. My husband's very, very loyal to the organization that we're a part of, and so it made the most sense. And he's had a brutal couple weeks just with the experience of this specific person. And my husband and I have just been like, man, do we keep him in this? Should we let him leave this? And, we're both really firm believers that if you made a commitment, you see it out. Right. So we have that. But we also really want to be clear that if somebody is telling you something about who you are, you can say that is going to define my identity, right? And I'm sure in both of our lives, we've had instances where somebody has said something about us, and it's just been like, we wrestle with like, well, what's the truth? Is that her experience with me, or is that actually the truth of who I actually am? And I can think back even to when I was a kid. There was a really nasty girl when I was in elementary school, and I was always picked last for kickball because I was chubby, and she would always say like, she's too chubby, she's not athletic, you can't pick her. And then I would be the last person picked. And when I'm not careful, that can become like the narrative that into my adulthood I took. And in fact, I didn't even play sports until I was 39 years old. I'd never played an organized sport. And it's a big part of that is because that narrative of what she said to me when I was in 4th grade stuck. It stuck. And I know the power of what we do when people tell a story about us. When we let the negative opinions of others or the negative thoughts others have of us create a story for us. We let them hold the pen. And so I want to share really quickly a reel with you that my husband found and shared with our son, Nick, and he watched it with kind of tears in his eyes. And then I want to kind of share what we did after we shared this with him. So I'm going to play it.
What's the number one thing that's holding most people back from reaching their full potential?
The story they sell themselves on. Everyone's got a story. And everyone wants to tell you their story of how bad they had it, how hard they had it. And the more times you tell yourself or others that story, the more you reinforce the fact that you're not meant to have happiness, success, abundance, great relationship, awesome health, abs, whatever. They don't realize that they still hold the pen. And there's thousands of empty pages still in that book that they can rewrite that story. But we have to let go of the pages that others have written in our book and realize we got this pen and we can start writing how the story looks from this day forward.
So I want to think about that for a minute, and I want to share with you why it was so emotional for Mike and I to share that with our son. So at 13 years old, we know that he knows what kind of athlete he is and what kind of kid he is. And we also know how vital the role adults play in the story that we create about ourselves. And so as much as Mike and I might say, you're doing an incredible job, you're an incredible athlete, he just doesn't like your style of play, or it isn't quite what he needs for the way that he is coaching. If we keep saying those things to him, yes, it can counter what this coach is causing for him. But at the end of the day, he's the one that holds the pen. He is the one who can look at the way that he has been perceived by this coach for the past 4 years and allow that to dictate the way that he's writing the story for what's happening. Or we can say to him, start anew, hold up the pen, and you just write to yourself the story of you, the truth about you. And so for his 13th birthday, I bought him a journal. And I'm actually going to cry thinking about this. I bought him a journal and I wrote a note to him, and I basically said, you are writing the story of your life. But if you need basic principles to know about the truth about who you are, here's a few things that I know about you. And I just wrote down like how I perceive him, not just as his mother, but as a adult who is seeing an incredibly cool kid, an athletic kid, a leader, and speaking that truth into him so that he can begin to really hold up that pen and say, I will not let this coach dictate my story. And so what we did when we wrote those things down for him, I started to see his confidence grow a little bit. No, he's not getting the playtime that, we believe that he deserves. And no, he isn't being seen as the leader on the team from the coach's perspective, but he is showing up as a leader, even though he's not showing up on the deck how we think he should be played. But as parents, one thing that I really want you to think about is, what is the story that you are allowing other people to write about you? And as business leaders, that's the same question I have for you, is what is the story you are letting other people write about who you are? And then what is the truth about you? What's the story that you're writing about yourself? So going back to that statistic about the Cleveland Clinic, if everything is repeated, if you're just repeating 80% of those thoughts being negative day in and day out, you're writing a story. You are actually writing a story in real life about who you are. So why don't you just hold up the pen a different way? Why don't you write a different story if you don't like the way it's turning out? So let's actually step into action. And I know that this is where Melanie can get really tactical. And I want you to think about these ideas. Number one, your success in direct sales is determined by your action. It's determined by your action. But your action is determined by your habits. And your habits are controlled by your thoughts. You do what you do because of what you think of you. You do what you do because of what you think of you. So Craig Groeschel taught that. So you do what you do because of what you think of you. You're the one who's holding the pen. What story do you want to tell? Let's dive into some tactical tips for this too.
Man, I feel like that's a really hard transition. You but it really does. It sets the stage so well for how we want to move into the okay, I feel all these emotions, Katy. I feel what you're saying. The story with Nick, I can see those things in myself. And maybe you're even beginning to think of some of the ways right now in your direct sales business that you've actually given somebody else the pen to your story, and you're giving them the power to actually determine whether or not you are going to follow your path and follow your dreams. And so really the first thing is becoming aware. And I hope that this podcast episode is really allowing you to bring some awareness, because we always say that once you bring something to the light, right, you're really able to address it and make a choice about it. So the first thing is for you to get out a sheet of paper. And one of the things that we believe in is just the power of journaling. And I do it every morning. I know you do as well, is sitting down and saying, what are actually the stories that I'm allowing to stand in my way of what I want? And so that's really kind of the first part. But the second thing is actually beginning to say to ourselves, all right, well, what do I want? What is it that I'm really seeking out with my direct sales business? And I'll share the story of when I was really stepping into direct sales and deciding that I wanted to take my business from being a part-time business and really saying, I want this to be large. I want this to be something where I actually do achieve the top rank in the company. And that was something that was very scary. It meant me being vulnerable by putting it out there that this was a goal that I wanted. And that meant I was vulnerable because I was risking failure. There was no guarantee that I was going to forge forward with all the effort and intensity and that I was actually going to be the number one in the company. It also meant that there were going to be more eyeballs on me. And that meant that there might be some more judgment. And we've talked about this in other episodes where, people are going to judge you no matter what you decide to do. And so when I first said, I want to be top in the company, I did this in my bathroom. I was standing in the bathroom. Probably I was getting ready to get into the shower. And at that time, I used to write sayings to myself on the bathroom mirror. And I took a tube of lipstick, which was how I would write on the mirror. And I wrote, I am the number one in the company. And I looked at that, and that saying, that affirmation, it didn't actually match me in the moment. I wasn't that person. I was not the number one. I think I was probably closer to 50 at that point in time, but I knew like this was something I desired, but I instantly felt embarrassed. If I can be honest with you, this is out of reach. I don't know that you can do this. And so I erased it, got into the shower, did my thing, got out. And what happens when you're in the shower, in the bathroom? The mirror fogs up. Everything gets foggy. And even though I had erased the words off of the bathroom mirror, they showed through again because they were still there. And it scared me. It took me back. And I left it like that for a few weeks. Every single morning as I would get out of the shower, it would say, I am the top in the company. But what I started to do through that process is I was journaling it out. What's it going to look like? Who am I going to become through this process? What is the work that it's going to take? I began to say to myself, all right, if you want this to be your reality, Melanie, how do you need to begin to act? And so I started to do what we've now termed these act as if statements or act as if actions. And so I started to sit down with my pen and my notebook, and I started to say, all right, if I want this to be my truth, what are the actions that I need to take now so that I become that person? And so I started to say, okay, if I want to be the top in the network, well, I have to recruit people and working members to my team, and I have to help them be, achieve success. And so I started to say, every single day, I am confidently inviting people to join my team. Every single day, I am positioning myself as an expert. Every single month, so I started to list out all of these actions. They're not afraid to host opportunity events. And so I would read that back to myself at the end of the day and say, what did I do today to act as if I'm already owning that next chapter of my life? And not overnight did things change for me, but over the course of that next year, I stepped into the power of being the number one in the company. And it was through these who am I becoming, these act as if affirmations that were backed up by action that I actually, in this case, rewrote the story. I rewrote that story. I now am that person because of the action steps that I took. And that's important. And along the way, there were a lot of imposter, feelings that came up, a lot of comparison, a lot of things that I had to work through. But I was so focused on who I was becoming and the actions that I needed to take that I was able to work through those self-limiting beliefs.
Which brings us to number 2. So Melanie talked a lot about the who. She talked about who she had to become in order to be the top in the industry. But if you think of it like this, the who before do, the who before do, the who before do, you have to define who you need to be and what you need to act like before you take action. And that leads us to number 2, which is a very obvious, you have to take action. You have to take action. And it's so funny because as a Christian, one of the things that I often laugh about is how often we're going to be like praying to God, like we need a sign or, give me an answer. And a lot of times the answer comes through the action. And so if you're like, God, please bless me with a big business. And then you sit on the couch in the evening and you're not taking action. Well, he's like, I am giving you the tools. Maybe I paired you with the right people who might need your mentorship and your guidance, but you're not actually doing. So that's a gut check for you to say to yourself, all right, if I want my business to bless me, I can't just talk the talk. I actually need to take the action. So if you know who you want to be through the process and who you are becoming through the process, just as Melanie did with Top in Industry, you have to think to yourself, what does action look like for me in this season? And not too long ago, I was doing one of those little mini coaching sessions that we do when somebody is our weekly winner. And I was doing one of the coaching sessions, and she was like, I'm really busy. I have a full-time job. I don't know when to take action. I want to remind you, on past episodes, we've talked about if you're setting these big, huge goals and then you're like overwhelmed by it and you're not taking immediate action in your business, it probably isn't the right goal for you. So the first thing we need to do is, in order to take action, we need to know where we're going, right? We need to know what our goal is, possibly at, the end of the year, but we also need to know what it is at the end of the quarter, end of the month, end of the week, end of the day. What do you want to be able to achieve? And then in order to achieve that, what are the things that you need to do in order to get there? So although I could spend a lot of time talking about activities that are necessary for those in direct sales, I have you already covered. So if you go into the comments section, there's a couple of resources for you, but the resource that Melanie and I swear by is the Direct Sales Done Right Planner. The planner it has an income producing activity tracker that really focuses on key areas like community, conversations, and then ultimately customer service, and what you need to be doing every single day to make sure that you're still seeing results in there. So for me right now, instead of talking about it, I want you to go into action and actually click the link and begin taking action in your business. That is the way to do it. There isn't any way around the work.
There isn't.
And that tool is going to tell you exactly what you need to do every single day.
Agreed. And I will tell you, even in the Direct Sales Done Right Academy, we spend the entire first week in that first module talking a lot about what we're sharing here, you know, the mindset, but even taking a deeper dive. And there are some great examples in a workbook and worksheets where you begin to create your own act as if affirmations. You begin to back it up with the action. We actually do go over the Direct Sales Done Right, the actual tracker in there as well. So just another great resource for you. So the third thing in really changing our beliefs and creating and achieving the goals that we want to is it's embedded in our routines. And so because we are in the mentorship business and we are guiding people, and we've actually been in different mentorship roles throughout our entire career. And one thing that we find is that motivation is not something that lasts forever. You do not have an infinite amount of motivation and energy. And actually, somebody in my Instagram, actually on my stories, said to me, like, how do you find the energy every single day to show up? And we were talking about movement, but you could relate this to your business. How do you find the energy every day to show up and work on your act as if affirmations and to change your self-limiting beliefs and work towards your goals? And it really is to understand that not every day you're going to be motivated. Not every day you're going to have the most energy. But what we want to encourage you to do is to start creating routines, to start changing your habits and start to instill sort of these checks and balances that no matter what comes your way, you may go through seasons where you feel like every door is being closed for you and you're met with a lot of resistance. But when you have these solid routines, that allows you to work through it and know that this is just part of the process. So to give you an example of what that routine would look like using my act as if affirmation, I am the top in the industry, that meant that when I rolled out of bed in the morning, for example, as I walked to the kitchen and got my morning coffee or pre-workout or whatever it was ready to go, I would remind myself, I am the top in the industry. Today's going to be a great day. What are you going to do today to act as if you're already there? And I would go in, I would make my morning drink. I'd go into my office or sit on the corner of the couch, and I would pull out, and still to this day, I do that. I read my goals. And then I read, what it is that I'm working on. What are the things that I need to do to become that person? And then I very simply sit down and say, okay, what are going to be the things today that I am going to do? And I make sure that's embedded into my time blocker so that I'm working on things that are helping me get closer to that goal. I am being grateful for the journey, because we sometimes only think about the big wins, and that's really where the success happens. But I want to encourage you every day to start saying, this was a win. Hey, yesterday, I had somebody that actually asked me about the business. I had a conversation with somebody about our products. I reached out to 5 new people. I did a reel, even though it might not be, I signed somebody up, I rank advanced. We want to pay attention to the wins that we're making, because those are our mile markers. That's helping us get closer to that bigger goal. And we can't downplay the successes that we're having along the way. Sure. So being grateful, identifying the things that you currently have, and really setting your intentions for the day. And when you begin to practice like that and you start your day on the offense, where you're the one that's saying, what's the narrative going to be today? What are the ways I'm going to determine success? It allows you to just be in that posture for being open to receive it, versus waking up on the defense and saying everything's going wrong. You open up social media, so-and-so is farther ahead. So-and-so has more people signed up. So routines are important. They remind us that we're on the journey. Even when there's hard times, we can root ourselves back in this is a process and it's going to take me some time to get there.
I love it. And we just want to remind you too that the story that you are writing, again, you're the one holding the pen. You are the one holding the pen. And so anything that has happened in the past, you can either determine whether those parts are parts that you're using for the good or are determining what you will actually create. So you got to remind yourself that the story you're writing, you are in control over. And at the end of the day, we just want to give you this simple truth bomb. If you take anything away from this episode, it's that your success in direct sales is determined by your action, and your action is determined by your habits, and your habits, they're controlled by your thoughts. You are the one who is in control of your thoughts, and those determine the success in direct sales. All right. So I think we have everything for today. We want to remind you to go over to the show notes, though. You want to click on the link to learn more about the different services that we offer, the different resources that we have. And one more thing that we like to do is we like to read a testimonial. And this client said, since beginning the Leadership Mastermind with Melanie in December, I have seen an increase, of $50,000 in sales from my organization. Awesome. I have received so many amazing tools and the structure to help get better organized and lead my team to success. We also have a team. We also have taken on more coaches in our team from January to April than we ever did in 2022. And that is from Heather O'Neill. That is really exciting. I love hearing from you guys about your successes and your wins from the different services we have here at Chic Influencer. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Direct Sales Done Right podcast. We'll see you next time.
All right, so if you loved today's episode, make sure you head over to wherever you listened to the episode today and leave us a rating and review. And also take a little screenshot and tag us on Chic Influencer. We'll feature you in our stories. Plus, we'd love to get your feedback and hear from our listeners.
Until next week, let's make chic happen.